Thanks for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast series, where we profile those who have overcome or are in the process of overcoming any life topic. We have three objectives with this podcast series. One is we want you to know that irrespective of what you're going through, no matter the difficulty, no matter the complexity of the life situation you're experiencing, know there are others who will share with you and help you through whatever difficulty you need to overcome, and we will do what we can to help you overcome. Our second objective is to help you reckon with and be resolved that there are multiple solutions to any life challenge you're experiencing. And while that may be difficult to take hands and wrap around, there are multiple solutions to any life dilemma. But as we think into and think through, we can come up together with multiple solutions. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If what you are encountering is a result of a decision that you made sometime in the past, that if you had a life redo, you would make a different decision, we want to help you develop those critical thinking skills such that you can analyze all of the facts and factors in a more objective, thorough way and reach a more informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture, and we are sponsoring this podcast series. Today, we feature for the second episode, Dan Hall. You'll note in his voice that he's very resolved as he discusses distractions and a lack of focus. Marty, what are some takes that our listeners can walk away from in listening to Dan?
Ron, as I was listening to Dan tonight, I thought you can hear in his voice his strong personality. He was born with that. And I feel that even when he was going through his dark time, that strong personality was there. That strong resolve was there. And so as a coach, he explains in detail how he can teach you to overcome your distractions, overcome your insecurities, and overcome and be the person that, like he said, what do you want? And help them recognize what they want. It was a great podcast, and one that many of our listeners that are going through something will learn a lot.
Dan speaks of intentionality, and he's a very structured person. So listen with us as Dan talks about being very intentional. He's very resolved, have a structure, and when it's all put together, you'll be able to avoid any distraction you're encountering. Dan, thank you again for joining us. You have a very resolved demeanor about you. And I think the topic of distractions, and I'm putting that in the context of my observation is, and I'm not asking you to agree with my observation, but my observation is that there's some number of people who are lacking focus, lacking purpose, and they've just gone through life or are going through life without a real specific purpose, and they're easily distracted or dissuaded. And if we were to map it out on a chart, it would look like a jagged line because they're chasing different things. But Dan, you don't have to agree with me, but those are just some of my observations, and our listeners are very interested in your observations. And I want to refer our listeners to the previous podcast with Dan, who went through a very difficult time in his life, but had the wherewithal, had the resolve to recover. And I think that's part of what your message may be tonight, Dan.
Very good. Ron and Marty, thank you so much for having me again. I'm excited to be with you guys and appreciate the fact that you take the time to put this content out to your listeners, and hopefully we can provide some value to them when it comes to dealing with distractions and time management specifically. Because, Ron, I believe today that we have more distractions than we have ever had in terms of electronic devices, phones, television, social media. Everything is fed to us through a fire hose. So what do we pay attention to? What is important? And I think that's one thing we should really talk about. Is important to remember what goes in to our brains, what goes into our head equals the output. So in other words, if we put garbage in, we get garbage out. So how do we sort through the distractions? And I think that's a great topic for tonight because it's something that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. Even today, I find myself, I get distracted easily, but I think the difference is awareness. And we talked about this briefly before, where awareness is key. If we don't know that we're being taken away from our task, or if we don't know that we're being distracted, we can't fix it. What would you think if I were to say, probably one of the most important questions I ask people when I do coaching is, we start right off and I say, what do you want? And I believe that's the foundational question, because if we don't know what we want, we can't possibly start to build the map to get there. So now the distractions come in. Maybe we don't really know what we want, or we're not clear on our purpose, and we're bombarded with distractions. How are we supposed to make progress?
I'm right on target with you, Dan. And yes, there are a lot of people who just don't know what they want, or if we were to ask them why they want that, sometimes it's difficult to come up with a reason. And if we were to address purpose, a why, a focus, something like that, I think we can identify those who are distracted by different things. And I totally agree. There are a lot of electronics that allow us to be distracted and go in different directions.
Right. So a lot of times what I find is people now, they don't have a clear vision of what they want or what they believe in. So we try to hammer that out. Now, assuming our listeners know what they want and what they believe in, how do we get there and avoid the distractions? And there's two things that I've found in my experience that without both of these ingredients, we will not be successful. And number one is intentionality. And what do I mean by this? I mean, we need to be intentional about what we do. From the moment we wake up in the morning until we rest at night, we need to be intentional about what we do and how that fits in with what we want, with the plan, with the map, with every choice, with every decision that's thrown at us. I believe that we need to look at it and run it through a filter. And that filter is, does this choice or does this decision get me closer to my goals or what I want, or does it take me farther away? So if we spend an hour on social media, does that get me closer or farther away? Well, it really depends what my goal is, okay? Social media can be a tool or it can be a toy, but without knowing why you're there, it's tough to say, okay, I'm wasting time, or no, I'm actually building my network. I'm connecting with people that know more. I'm learning from other people. So again, it comes back to what do we want? And intentionality, I believe, is key. So what are we doing with our time? On top of that, how about consistency? Now, what I see is, for example, we'll take someone who might start a podcast, for example, and they do it for a week or 2 weeks, and they're into 3 weeks, and then they look and they say, gee, I really don't have a lot of followers. I don't have a lot of traction, so I'm going to give up. Where's their consistency? I mean, we know that we need to do this for a year, 2 years, 3 years consistently before we get traction. So the same is true in life, I believe. When we wake up, we can be intentional. We can review our finances. We can love on our spouse. We can go out and run or go to the gym and take care of our health. But if we only do it once every 3 weeks, well, the results are futile. What takes us away from that? It's distractions. Distractions come in so many forms. I think that's very interesting too, because whether you're 8 years old or 80, there's different types of distractions everywhere. So one of the things that I've used that works real good for me is a list. And some people are like, oh, yes, the list. Okay, we know, we write it down, whatever. But here's what happens, I find typically, at least with my coaching clients, is we'll write it down. We'll write these items down. And then here's what I do. I go through and I pick the easiest items to do, and then I check them off the list because I feel good. Now, a month later, guess what? All those hard items are still on my list, and nothing's done. And why is that? I was comfortable checking the easy items off and leaving the hard ones till later, and now what happens? Those little problems, they compound and they become bigger problems. So My version of the list is a little bit different, Ron. What I do is I call it a power list. And what I have is 3 to 5 tasks every single day, no more than 5. And what they are is they're very specific tasks. And these tasks must move me closer to my goals. No exceptions. And these aren't things that I can say, well, you know, I don't feel like it today, I'm not going to do it. If I know that something as simple as my house needs to be heated this winter, I need to order propane. Well, a lot of times it just goes and we forget about it until the last minute, and then it's an emergency, and oh no, we're out of heat and whatever. No, call a propane company. It's that simple. If I struggle with health, one of those items might be go to the gym and work out for an hour today. 3 to 5, no more than 5, and the objective is to complete those before the end of the day. Personally, I try to complete those items before 10 o'clock in the morning every day. And I actually feel bad when I don't complete those. But I don't move on to anything else until those simple powerless tasks are done. And that goes along with the concept of eating the elephant. We can't take an elephant and eat the whole thing at once. We can't cram it into our mouths. We need to take small bites of it. And with the powerless concept, little tiny tasks every day, at the end of the year, all these little wins add up. And not only does that equal confidence for you, but it also equals focus in mental discipline.
You've got a very methodical approach to this topic, which I think is exactly what we need. I, too, am working with a client who feels just totally overwhelmed to the point where he's almost withdrawn and is choosing not to accomplish some of the mundane tasks. One of the things that I've encouraged him to do is to put a list together, just as you said, and it's all right, in my opinion, to have some relatively small tasks such that you can see progress or achievement, which hopefully will give you self-encouragement to go further. One of the things that I see, Dan, I'm very curious of your perspective, is there's got to be, I call it a true grit. In other words, you've got to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to have the discipline to keep going. But a part of this is keep going to do what and go where. I agree with you that having, I call it strategic objectives, but at least having some sort of a defined point to go to, and hopefully it's a journey that you're not going to stop at that defined point, but rather it becomes a waypoint, but it's the next step in your journey ahead. But I think, Dan, that, and you seem, I am reflecting now, on a part of your past life that you had a failing, that was a pretty dramatic failing, but you, I think, had the attitude that you will overcome, and you did overcome, but took, I'm going to believe, very concerted focus to not get hung up on the failure, but rather you set strategic objectives, and you came out from a fairly dark period of your life.
Right, Ron. I think one of the things you mentioned that I really like there was that waypoint. What is that goal? What is that waypoint? And it's important to remember that goal or that waypoint should be dynamic. So when you reach that goal, it's not, okay, game over, now we're going to rest, now we're going to quit. You should be thinking what's next. And there's a term that I use for this because a lot of times people will tell us, they'll say things like, well, remember where you came from, or can't you be happy with what you've got? And I have mixed feelings on that because I'm very grateful. I show gratitude every day. I'm extremely blessed. I'm very happy for what I have, but I use the term blissfully dissatisfied. I believe that when I am standing in front of God to be judged, my worst fear is that I didn't live my life fully. I didn't use my gifts fully. I didn't impact as many people as I could have. So just because we meet one goal doesn't mean we're done. Where do we go from here? What's the next step? And it's not that we're not grateful. It's that we want to do more. So coming out of a dark period, absolutely. It's easy to get distracted and get pulled into any number of habits, whether it be drugs or alcohol or things that we shouldn't be looking at online, because that's the way to cover our problems. But realistically, it takes a lot of courage from a person to look in the mirror and say, you know what, where I am is not working. I need to refocus, and if I can't do that on my own, I need to seek help, possibly from somebody who's been through it or somebody who knows better. And I think the three most powerful words on this planet would be, I need help. Yet we don't hear them that often. So if we don't ask for help, how can we get it? Well, hopefully we have a lot of listeners that soak in podcasts or follow influencers that give good advice. But it really is a journey, okay? And it's nothing we turn around. We don't come out of a dark place overnight. It's a process that's a 3 to 5 year thing, and that's with proper guidance and most of all mental discipline, because the brain will either carry us through whatever we're going through or it's going to destroy us. And the cool thing is, you get to choose.
You're a very resolved person. Several things came to mind. The Apostle Paul, for those who are faith-based, said that I am content to be in the state I am. I think what he was saying with that, I'm content with who I am in Christ, but I'm always going forward to achieve more. And so as we are equipped to do various things, and we have the talent to do that, Dan, I feel the same way you do. I would not want to stand in front of our Lord, and he said, well, you did okay, but could have done a bunch more. And so I think the other part of this, Dan, is accountability partners, that as we are able to find people of like values and find people who are where we want to be in life, if we choose to partner with them and they agree, they're willing to help us, those are the kind of people who can inspire us to be even more than what we are. They're the kind of people who can, quite honestly, assess us if we've lost a purpose, lost a focus, and we're just kind of meandering.
Amen, Ron. I think that's a very accurate assessment. Now, with that, it also takes a courageous person to say, hey, call me out. What I like to ask some of my clients is my question to them is, how many friends do you have that accept you just the way you are? And what's the answer we get? Well, they all do. And my response is, get new friends. And they look at me like I have 3 heads. And I said, no, I'm serious, get new friends. If nobody is willing to step up and hold you accountable, to do a better job, to maybe be a better husband or wife, to square away your finances, to get healthy for your family, if there's nobody calling you out, you know what we do as humans? We become lazy, we become complacent, we give into distractions, and we get stale.
And Dan, I'm going to interject right here. For me, the word status quo, or the term status quo, is almost an anathema to me. I don't ever want to be associated with status quo. I always want to look at various situations and look at how things and people, myself, can improve. I don't think we're ever at a point, and I consider this the journey waypoint discussion that we were having a little bit earlier, but I think that there's always a journey that we can know more, we can be better, and if we accept the fact that there's always something to learn, and if we're of the mindset that we always want to give whatever it is we have to fill ourselves up with more, because I always want to be giving to someone else, if that is a mindset that we have. That pretty well describes you. You're a very giving person, and you're a very confident person, albeit maybe there was a point in your life where you were less confident than what you are now, but that is your confidence, what your persona is very inspirational to me and a lot of our listeners.
Thank you, Ron. I think it's important to know that regardless of your background, regardless of where you're at in life, that no one is necessarily born with confidence. Confidence is a lot like leadership. It's built over the years. It's built through trials, through failures, through wins. But most of all, I've learned that confidence comes from keeping promises to myself first. And what I've observed is that the people that are most confident, A, they're not afraid to get in the game and play. B, they're not afraid to fail. And C, they're not afraid to try again, to get up and try again. And what this results in is if you say, okay, I'm going to get in the game and I'm going to play, and you actually do it, you keep a promise to yourself. If you say that we're going to do date night, husband and wife date night on Friday night, and you do it, you keep a promise to yourself. If you say you're going to lose 20 pounds and you do it, you keep a promise to yourself. And what happens over time is when you're honest with yourself and when you keep these promises, all these little promises and all these little wins stack up to the point where you have all these wins stacked, and that equals confidence. And that's not to say that I don't deal with the exact same problems that everyone else on this planet does, because I do. I just look at them differently. I process them differently mentally. When friends come to me with a problem, when my employees come to me with a problem, I want to hear the problem once, and then the rest of the time we're going to talk about solutions.
For the person listening who says, man, I like everything you're saying, I want to be the person you're describing, but I'm not there yet, is there a call to action that you can help these listeners who say, I know I can improve, but I need some help knowing how to do that? Can you suggest a call to action?
I can suggest a couple calls to action, Ron. Number one, depending on the personality type, some people are more than qualified to help themselves to become more confident, to develop mental toughness. And it starts out with simple things like making the list, 3 to 5 tasks, and doing that consistently and completing those tasks consistently and intentionally for at least 60 days. It takes a minimum of 60 days to develop a habit. So it seems like common sense and it seems elementary, but why would we reinvent the wheel if this worked? We wouldn't. So we start with a list, okay? Beyond that, I happen to believe that there's 4 areas in our life that we need to have in harmony to be successful. Your mind, your body, your health, your business and your finances, and your relationships. If these 4 things don't have somewhat of a harmony, and of course we'll be strong in one and weak in another at times, there's an ebb and a flow to it, but I think it's important to be on point with all of those areas. So when you put your list together, where I'm going with this is as you put your list together, there might be something on your list that applies to your health. If you know you need to get in shape, there may be something that applies to your finances or your relationships. But form your list around meeting those needs. So that's number one, real simple, is a list. And people say, yeah, okay, I got that. But if you really look in the mirror and ask yourself, can I do this? Will I stick to it? And will I be consistent? If we're being truthful, the answer many times is, well, I'm going to do it for 2 weeks, and then I'm not going to do it anymore. So step 2, there's a program that I went through twice. Most recently, I got off it about a month ago. The program is called 75 Hard. And if you search online, #75 Hard, what this program is, it's designed as a mental toughness program. It also has a physical component. So the requirements of the program are, you need to take a progress picture every day of yourself. Well, why would we do that? Well, there's a health component to this, and you'll see where I'm going. But number 1 is a progress pic. Number 2, drink a gallon of water every day. Okay, that seems pretty simple, right? Number 3, 2 workouts a day. Minimum 45 minutes apiece. One of them needs to be outside. Okay, and now it's getting a little tougher. Item number 4, stick to a diet. Now, it doesn't need to be a diet that we decide or we dictate, but you figure out your diet, you stick to it, there's no cheat meals. Number 5, no alcohol. We do these things for 75 days consistently. If we fail any step, we start back at day 1. So we say, how tough is this, right? And I thought that. I'm a pretty confident person. I said, I can breeze through this. Well, let me tell you, on about day 10, I got home at 11:30 that evening, and I didn't have my second workout in. And it had to be outside. Well, hey, no problem, I'll go for a run real quick, right? Well, that night it happened to be raining. Not only raining, but thundering. So guess what Dan did? Dan suited up. Dan went for the run, and I've got a picture to prove it that my wife took when I came back. I came back probably 12:30, 1 o'clock, soaked. And what the point of this program is to do these things even when it's inconvenient, and to do these things even when you don't want to. And what this does over time, over the 75 days, if you complete it successfully, you will have a sense of confidence like you can take on the world. It's amazing. I tend to think I'm a pretty confident person to begin with, but going through this twice, I love it. It energizes me. It's a challenge to myself. It's not easy to do it. I mean, we forget to take a picture, and we start back at day one. It seems so silly, but it's a mental toughness game, and it works. So that would definitely be a call to action for those listeners that are ambitious. You're going to get a physical result. You're going to improve your health, but it's really about mental toughness and developing discipline, which I feel is key to success in any part of life, really.
Totally agree with you, Dan. Mental toughness will lead to success, and I'm a believer, as I suspect you are as well, Dan, nothing worthwhile is going to come easy. Everything is a process, and it sometimes takes 75 days or something comparable to that to develop the discipline when you see the results, and there is a true grit that says there's no failure, there's nothing of that nature that will keep you from achieving whatever it is that is let's just call it a God-ordained goal. And again, I too want to be careful in talking about a goal. I'm not talking about staying there, but rather a waypoint. Dan, you're very articulate, and you've got that true grit persona about you, which is great.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. I think there's one thing that that we should remember, too. A lot of times we find ourselves, I may get on a tangent here, but the truth of the matter is a lot of times we find ourselves saying, you know, I'll do it when the time is right, or I'll do it after vacation, or I'll do it when I have the money. And what we need to remember is done is always better than perfect. We don't need to be perfect. We need to take action. We need to be disciplined. We need to get it done.
Just one other thing in kind of a wrap-up, Dan. I hear some people say, I'll try it. I always use or hear that term with a bit of skepticism because it's been my experience, and I've seen others, that there's a built-in excuse that, well, just didn't work, so I can give it up, as opposed to I will do it. And the I will do it, knowing that we have a focus and a purpose, I think that kind of a person is going to have the stick-to-itiveness, the true grit, more than the person who just says, well, I'll try it, and almost be flippant about it.
Absolutely correct. That is one term that sends chills down my spine, and it makes a lot of people around me uncomfortable when they say, you know, I'll try. And I said, no, you won't. You're either going to do it or you're not. There's no in between. So why, you know, rather than set yourself up for an excuse, either do it or admit that this really isn't a priority and I'm not going to do it. And along that note, I also get a kick out of when a lot of people say, well, you know, if this doesn't work, my plan B is. And in my opinion, that if you have a plan B, you have an out. You have a way to fail. You have a backup. I tell my clients, get rid of your plan B, tear the paper up, take that plan, burn it to the ground. They're like, what? Burn that plan to the ground, because if you have no plan B, you have to make plan A work. And it gives you a different sense of urgency, a different sense of need to get it done.
Thank you for your very confident resolve, and you've got a great plan of action. And my guess is every one of your clients know that you are a person of resolve, and that is very inspiring.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight, your input and wisdom as well. I think it's fascinating that we can get together like this. And the best part is we learn something from everyone we meet. That's what I love about this.
It's exactly right. Dan, thank you again for sharing, and happy to share with you those who take you up on this call to action and turn their life around.
Absolutely, Ron. Thank you, and Marty, for having me again. And as always, if there's anything I could do for you guys, I would love to help out, and just appreciate your time tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. What are your thoughts on distractions? You feel you're distracted? What are your thoughts on being structured, being intentional, being focused, having a mental toughness, mental discipline? What are your thoughts on all of those topics? Are they integral to being focused and avoiding distractions, or at least being able to manage distractions? Are they helpful in developing priorities, focus? Interact with us and let us know your thoughts. We want to engage with each other, and let us know what challenges you may have, what those within your circle of influence may have. If you have overcome distractions, let us know how you've done that. If you know some others who need help overcoming distractions, let us know. We want to help. Coaching. It's an art that is not well understood, but there are some people who are prone to distractions just because of some things in their subconscious. They have been taught some things, said some things about them. And when I say taught, it's not a conscious effort, but there are things that have been programmed into the subconscious that help people become distracted, that become a focus of their life, that people allow themselves to become distracted. Sometimes it's not until another person, a coach, a mentor, an accountability partner, a person of confidence who can align themselves with the person to help them understand and realize some of the factors that are prevalent in a person's life. I hope that you'll engage with us and just let me know some of your thoughts. And let's engage together. Call us at 410-586-1875 or send an email to ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, @thecooperculture.com. We also have a digital relationship course we want to make available to people. It is a relationship course based on dating, marriage, and leading into romance and a lifetime partner. We know that relationships are an integral part of a totally fulfilled life, and when you have the right relationship with a partner such as I have with Marty, you can have a totally fulfilled life. Let us help you with selecting the right life partner, and it is frequently personality driven, that you can be very opposite as Marty and I are, yet be very complementary, such that we make up for each other's weaknesses. That Marty complements my weaknesses, and I hope she would tell you that I complement hers. But let's get together, let's share thoughts, let's engage with each other, and let's work with each other to help overcome distractions to where we can be more focused, structured, and be more disciplined with overcoming and being victorious with any of life's challenges. We look forward to interacting with you.